I'm here with my guest, Curt Welling, and I want to turn to an important topic that you are teaching a lot about these days. If I move to your current career now up at the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth, can you explain the concept of bias, right? And how it affects conversations, but what is bias?
Yeah. So this is a topic that has become more and more prominent in lots of people's thinking in the political climate in which we find ourselves, in the information climate in which we find ourselves, in the cultural conflict climate in which we find ourselves. And bias is simply a predisposition to see facts or circumstances in a particular way, and it can have a number of elements. One of the most common biases is called confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. Human beings have a natural tendency to take more seriously or to seek out things that tend to confirm their beliefs and the way they see things. But there are other biases. Prejudice or stereotyping is the classic kind of bias. Like
gender, like race.
Gender, race, religion, age, that we tend to group people on the basis of a caricature, and then we treat that caricature as though it's an accurate reflection. So it can be treating a group of people as though they're all monolithic and they all have exactly the same characteristics. It can be, of course, jumping to conclusions about people when you find the classic example of bias in policing is the concept of profiling.
Yeah.
That while it has some technical validity, that you can look at a population of people and you can do a statistical analysis, it obviously has an impact and a consequence which is much more profound than just the statistical analysis. So one of the things that we find in our political climate today, in our social climate, is through a combination of independent but reinforcing dynamics, social media, the cable news cycle, the instantaneous transmittal of information on a real-time basis around the world, is that we're bombarded with information, and the question of the validity or the authenticity of information is one which is less and less obvious. And so there are more places you can go to find things that comport with the worldview that you have and don't challenge your worldview. If you put this in the context of a business community or a business school, where one of the things you're trying to teach students how to do is to think critically about problems, to be driven by data and information and some level of validity, truth. You can see why coming to those questions with biases and not being aware of your biases is the enemy of critical thinking and can result in bad decision-making, can result in lots of other negative consequences.
Absolutely. Like I know I have a bias, which is not any of the biases you mentioned, like personality biases, narcissism, arrogance. For me, I shut down when someone is arrogant, or narcissists I know can't change after a certain point. So I can stop trying, right? There are all sorts of cultural biases that we have in those kinds of situations. So tell me a little bit more about what you're teaching about this, at the school. Did you?
Well, it's an awful lot of what goes on in business school is to give students analytical techniques to be able to take complicated facts, whether they're financial or business or other things, and to sort them and organize them and use the organized facts to make decisions.
Yes.
And so the first thing you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to not have preconceptions about what facts are relevant or how they should select them. But the second thing is to think about causation. So that if you think about large-scale business problems or social problems, in one of my courses, which examines the social contract and the way business and government and civil society work together and what their expectations are and what they should, the standard to which they should be held and what they should bring to the table in terms of the social contract, we look at the question of obesity and diabetes.
Yes.
In the context of Mayor Bloomberg's desire a number of years ago to ban 20-ounce sodas in New York. And presumption that many students jump to is that the answer to diabetes is to eliminate sugared beverages, because there's some information out there about the pernicious aspect of sugared beverages and health and so on. And so what you're trying to do is to say, come to this question appreciating its complexity in a way that gives you a more open mind to getting all the information that might bear on understanding what the root cause. It turns out diabetes is a very complicated thing. Right? It has a genetic component, it has a lifestyle component, it has an exercise component, it has metabolism. So there's a whole bunch of things. And to say that the root cause of diabetes in America is sugared beverages is so simplistic and damaging, to the extent that a bad solution to a problem not only doesn't solve the problem, but it exacerbates the problem. So this concept of critical thinking and skepticism can't be separated from this idea of understanding how you look at things and what biases you bring to a situation analysis. And the best leaders, in my opinion, are ones that have the ability to come to a complicated situation and, in trying to organize the facts, recognize their biases and come to it with an open mind. Which we don't find much in evidence in our politics and our society today.
And you and I, if we had time, we would talk about like tools and techniques that we use, like ladders of inference and like inquiring with an open-ended questions, inquiry versus advocacy, right? Inquiry, asking open-ended questions to understand what the facts somebody else has and what their biases and assumptions are, versus advocating what we believe, right? But we look at what is the issue we're really trying to solve. We assign decision-making rules. Who's the decision maker? Who advises who? Right? There's lots of techniques that we can use to have better, richer, real conversations.
And I have to say, again, now from this late career perspective of learning how to teach, which requires me to be in touch with some of my own biases. The first time you take a group of people through the ladder of inference, and you see the light going on with the people, it's incredibly powerful. It is
incredible.
I didn't realize I was making those inferences.
In 2 seconds flat.
Yeah, it happens very quickly.
We make them based on the data we see, right? In that.